Welcome to the Creative Commons RX podcast. Before diving into this episode, I want to ensure we're all on the same page. This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.
Let's talk about iron. It's a fascinating and, honestly, kind of weird substance, right? On one hand, it's absolutely essential for our survival. I mean, it is literally in our blood. But it has this much darker side. It can also be a seriously potent poison. So how can one thing be both a lifesaver and a killer? And think about it. You definitely have iron in your home right now. It's in your supplements, your fortified cereal, maybe even the pan you cook with. So the big question is, how did something so common, so vital, become the #1 cause of poisoning deaths in kids? That's what we're going to unpack. Okay, so first things first. To really get why iron can be so dangerous, we have to understand why we need it so badly in the first place. This is where that whole essential toxin paradox really begins. So what's iron's day job in our bodies? Well, it's absolutely crucial. Picture this. Iron is at the very core of hemoglobin, the molecule that makes your red blood cells red. It acts as the body's personal oxygen delivery service. It literally grabs onto oxygen in your lungs and drops it off at every single cell. Without it, our bodies just couldn't function. And because it's so critical, of course, we put it into supplements, especially things like prenatal vitamins. But this is where the story takes a really tragic turn. Back in the 1990s, this well-intentioned health supplement led to a horrific unintended consequence. Accidental ingestion of these pills made iron the single leading cause of death by poisoning in young children. So what is actually happening inside the body that allows this essential mineral to become so toxic? Well, this is where we get into the science of what's called the overload cascade. You see, your body is incredibly smart. Normally, it has this tightly controlled system for handling iron. Think of it like a really strict bodyguard service called transferrin. Its job is to bind to iron and safely escort it where it needs to go, making sure it doesn't cause any trouble. But in an overdose, the whole system gets completely swamped. All the bodyguards are busy. This unleashes free iron into the bloodstream, and these are the bad guys. And what do these unsupervised rogue iron molecules do? They kick off a chemical reaction that creates these incredibly destructive particles called free radicals. Now, the best way to picture what free radicals do is pretty intense. They literally cause the body to rust from the inside out. Yeah, this damaging process is called oxidative stress, and it is the absolute heart of iron's toxicity. And this isn't a slow burn. It's a devastatingly fast chain reaction. First, that rogue iron sparks a chemical process that creates some of the most aggressive free radicals imaginable. Next, these radicals just go to town, viciously attacking and tearing apart the protective membranes that surround our cells. And finally, as those cells literally fall apart, tissues get injured and vital organs begin to shut down. It's a full-blown catastrophe at the cellular level. So that's the science. Now let's look at what this actually looks like for a patient, for a parent, or a doctor. Clinically, iron poisoning is like a medical drama with a truly terrifying and misleading plot twist. The whole poisoning event typically unfolds in 5 stages. It kicks off with really severe stomach problems. Then it seems to get better for a little while before descending into shock, liver failure, and even long-term scarring. But that quiet period in the middle, that's the most dangerous part. And here's why it's so insidious. Stage 2. A child's vomiting and stomach pain might actually stop. They might seem like they're getting better. You'd think, oh, thank goodness, the worst is over. But it's a complete deception. It is the calm before the storm. Because while the symptoms on the outside are fading, on the inside, that cellular rusting is silently escalating, building towards a total collapse. And that collapse is stage 3, circulatory shock. The body's losing fluids, the blood vessels become leaky, and the iron is directly toxic to the heart. All of that combines to make the patient's blood pressure plummet. This is the climax of the poisoning, and tragically, it's the most common reason these overdoses turn fatal. But this isn't a hopeless situation. Medicine can fight back. When a patient gets to the hospital, clinicians have a strategy to diagnose the threat and literally pull the poison out of the body. The treatment is called chelation. First, they have to figure out what they're dealing with. A blood test to check the iron levels is obviously key, but an even more important clue is a condition called metabolic acidosis. It's a reliable sign that the body's cells are in really deep trouble from the poison. Interestingly, some of the other tests you might think would be helpful are actually pretty misleading here. Once the diagnosis is confirmed, doctors bring out their main weapon, chelation therapy. The concept is actually pretty straightforward. You give the patient a substance that's designed to hunt down and grab onto the toxic iron, hold on tight, and form a new compound that the body can safely get rid of. The antidote itself is a drug called deferoxamine, or DFO for short. You can think of it like a molecular magnet or a tiny claw that's programmed to do one thing: find that dangerous free-floating iron. It snatches it up, forms a harmless little package, and then the kidneys just flush it right out. And here's a wild little detail. Clinicians often know it's working when the patient's urine turns a distinct reddish-brown color, which they call vince rosé, like the wine. Now, chelation therapy is an amazing tool for saving individual lives, but the bigger story here, the more important one, is how we stop this crisis from happening in the first place. This is truly a story of a major public health victory. So what changed? In 1997, the FDA stepped in with 3 simple but totally brilliant interventions. First, they required clear warning labels on all iron products. Second, they launched public education campaigns. And third, and this was probably the real game changer, they required high-dose pills to be sold in those individual blister packs, where you have to pop each pill out one by one. That makes it so much harder for a small child to accidentally swallow a lethal dose. In the results, they were absolutely staggering. In the decade before these regulations, 29 children in the US died from iron poisoning. In the 5 years after, that number dropped to just 1. It is one of the clearest examples you will ever see of how a simple, thoughtful change to packaging can literally save lives. So the story of iron poisoning is a sobering reminder of a hidden danger, but it's also a really hopeful example of a problem that we actually solved. And it leaves us with a pretty important question. What other hidden dangers are lurking in our homes right now that could be fixed with a simple, thoughtful change, just like this one?
This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.